Before we get into this episode, I would like to pre-warn you that the following story contains subject matter that some people may find distressing. Listener discretion is advised.
My name is Rebecca. My biological parents are Angela Marcel and Dwight Jerome Bergeron. I was adopted at age 6. I'm writing this to tell my story about what I remember and how my biological parents did not do the horrible things that they were accused and convicted of. When the court hearings began, I can remember being asked a lot of questions, but all I could remember was looking at my dad. I was not able to recall what we had rehearsed with Renee, Cam, and Leslie as what to say when I was asked these questions. I couldn't focus on it. All I could think about was my dad and how much I missed him. My great-grandmother had a bunch of newspapers about my mom and dad that I found. She told me that I needed to know what really happened, but not yet. She said that my dad didn't deserve to be there because he didn't do anything. If my dad had just gone along, nothing would have happened to them. My dad, Dwight, was accused of some very horrible things that he did not do. During these hearings, I remember trying to tell them that it was not my dad and that it never was. In 1993, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences for abusing his own children. Since 1994, in those first hearings, I have recanted my statements several times over the years and to several people. My dad has been incarcerated for 26 years now. He's been punished for something he never did. I ask you to please hear my story. I've tried so hard over the years to make this situation right. It's been a losing battle. I've given all I have. I only want to prove that my parents are innocent before I leave this world. Someone, please help me do this.
Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name is Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. And today, we start a new story. The case of this man.
Jerome Dwight Bergeron, and charged with 4 counts of aggravated rape on my 4 kids. Went to trial. I was acquitted on my baby. I was found guilty on 3, which at the time would have been ages, 1, 2, and 3. And according to the indictment, the baby wasn't born yet, but I was still charged with it. I was convicted to 3 mandatory life sentences, which in Louisiana is until the day you die. And that's what I'm serving now. I actually been here going on 34 years.
So over the 3 years of creating this podcast, I've been asked many questions about what I do. One of the most frequent ones is, are there any stories that you wouldn't cover? Now, the quick answer to that is yes. In fact, there are many stories that I have held back on sharing for one reason or another. And there are also stories I have passed on altogether. What I do is not and will never be about shock value or putting things out for the sake of downloads. I understand also what I do is quite rare. There are not many who give a platform to quote-unquote criminals to share their stories. It's a tightrope that I walk because, of course, within these stories there are always victims. Victims that I need to be aware of and careful as to not create any more distress than they've already faced. Along with that question, when I'm asked if there's stories that I would or wouldn't share, I've generally always been of the opinion that any stories that involve sexual abuse against children, I will not cover. Why? Well, other than the simple fact of the crime itself being just abhorrent, it's also for my own mental welfare. As a father of 2 small children, sitting through discussions in relation to this crime was just not something I personally want to do with my day. However, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. So when this story came across my desk, I felt that this may in fact be one of those exceptions. Dwight Bergeron is a man who was tried and convicted of, in my opinion, and I would bet many people's opinions, the worst, most heinous crime you can conceive of. Not once, but in fact 3 times, against his own children. So why this story? Well, at the start of this episode, you would have heard the words of someone who was supposedly one of Dwight's victims. These words were voiced by an actress. However, they are the words of Dwight's daughter, who, at just 6 years old, sat in the witness stand of her father's trial. Tears in her eyes, she told the court that her father was an abuser of the worst kind. Now an adult with children of her own, she says that that was all a lie. A lie that was orchestrated by the very people that were supposedly protecting her and her siblings. And as I read the statement from Dwight's daughter, Rebecca, it would be the last paragraph that made me realize that we owe it to her to hear this man's story.
My dad has been incarcerated for 26 years now. He's been punished for something he never did. I ask you to please hear my story. I've tried so hard over the years to make this situation right. It's been a losing battle. I've given all I have. I only want to prove that my parents are innocent before I leave this world. Someone, please help me do this.
But it's not just her saying this. Rebecca's brothers, who also at the time claimed their father was abusing them, have come out and said the same. It was a lie. A lie that has so far cost Dwight over 3 decades of his life. But before we get into all of that, of course, we must first start at the very beginning.
Yes, sir. Born and raised down there, mostly in Houma, Louisiana. Me and my mom were there before she died. We lived down in Chauvin, which is the Bayou. We call it down the Bayou. And that's where I was raised at. Down there, Moisey shrimpers and crabbers, and that's a lot of your offshore workers. That's what that is down there. From there, Mama got killed in a car wreck, and I was about 8 years old. From there, I was raised with family members. So from there, oh Lord, towards about 11 years old, my nanny, she took me in the longest. After that, about 11, she took me in, and I grew up just working in the fields and trapping nutria, muskrat, and coon, and killing wildlife. And I would sell a lot of my ducks and my rabbits and my coons, and I'd sell a lot of that to the neighbors and the people in the neighborhood, So I'd make my own money because,
growing up in the Louisiana Bayou meant a hard and practical kind of childhood. Dwight wasn't a kid who got an allowance or spent weekends at the movies. He learned early that if he wanted money, he'd have to earn it, the way generations before him had, by working with the land and the water around him. He would set traps in the swamps for raccoons and muskrats, animals whose pelts could be sold for a few dollars apiece. Fur buyers would come through rural Louisiana, and a kid like Dwight could make pocket money, or sometimes the only money he had, by bringing in whatever he caught. It was dirty work, hauling heavy traps, wading through mud thick with mosquitoes, handling animals that snapped and clawed. Duck hunting wasn't just a sport either. Ducks meant meat for the table, and in season you could sell what you shot to neighbors or local buyers.
That's how I grew up. I washed dishes 3 times a day. I used to mop the floor twice a day, and you grew up doing that. So it's just part of your life, So it just it don't bother me. I love to work, So that's one thing I can say. I'm not scared of that. But like I said, I made my money coming up, making my own money. I trap in the swamp back there, and I run, like I said, nutria, muskrat, and coons. I sell my belts, and I kill ducks and catch turtles and catch rabbits. And people in the area would buy all that from me. They make orders with me, and say, look, I want a couple of rabbits, I need a couple of duck, give me 3 turtles, give me 4 rabbits, give me 4 ducks. And I go back there and fill all my orders, and I come back, knock on my neighbors' doors, and give them what they ordered. That's how I made my money coming up.
For Dwight, the Bayou itself was both a playground and a workplace. He learned how to move quietly through the marsh, how to read the water, set traps, and check them before school. This kind of upbringing shaped him. Tough, resourceful, and used to getting by with little. Kids like Dwight didn't grow up dreaming about college or big careers. Their reality was survival, helping put food on the table, and maybe making a few dollars where they could. Dwight's parents split up when he was young, with his siblings living with his father and Dwight staying with his mum. After she passed, he says he'd go to live with his boat captain father, but it wouldn't last long.
My dad was a boat captain, so the way he would work, we'd like maybe a day out the month. That's pretty much how it was. Well, my nana, she would let him see us, and we, like I said, we usually get one day or half a day out the month, to see him. He couldn't take care of all of us, because he had 5 of us. Him and my mama were separated, and I was living with my mama, and the rest of them were living with him. When mama died, I had to move in with them, and that didn't go too well. I was mama's boy. My dad told me, he said, "You're on your own, boy." So I'm like, "All right, Dad." So I started paying rent. At 13 years old, I'm paying $125 a month to live in a camper. And as long as I went to school, my nana told me, that you're going to still go to school, but you're going to pay rent. And that's when I started paying rent. And
at 13?
I pretty much raised myself. Yes, sir. My dad told me, he said, "You're on your own, boy." Well, my parent had raised his fist to my little brother, and I raised my fist to him. And they told me to get out. And my nana told me, she said, "You can't put the ball on the streets. I don't care where you put him. He ain't living in my house." And she said, "He ain't got nowhere to go." He said, "I don't care. He ain't living here." So my nana told me to step out. And then a little while later, my nana comes and said, "Look, Dwight, this is what we're going to do." She said, "You see that camp in the backyard?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." You're going to pay me $125 a month rent. You're going to live in that camp. I said, "Okay, but you're going to go to school." She said, "Because your daddy told me to tell you you're on your own, boy." I'm like, "What?" Daddy said, "You're on your own." I'm like, "Okay." $125 a month wasn't nothing for me anyway. I mean, I'm making $200 and $300 a week as a kid, chopping noodles and, and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm making money. That's why I guess you just say, I'm not a person that's how should I say, I don't like video games. I don't like games. I don't like sitting there watching TV. If I'm going to be home, I want to be working on some equipment, I want to be in my yard growing something I can eat, I want my time, to me, is valuable. I want to do something that I'm going to get something from it, I could be building things I could sell to make money off of. I don't want to sit behind an Atari game or a Nintendo game or, I never was like that. I'm not going to waste my money and go to the mall and spend it in some arcade. I'm not, if I'm going to spend my money, it's going to put some in a gas can and put that gas into that lawnmower, and I'm going to cut some yards. That's how I was. And that's where I was, also just baling hay, making money, baling hay, and working in the fields, and also traveling my animals, and walking in the back of my street back there. I can get you all the crawfish you want, and all the nutria you want, and muskrats you want, and rabbits you want, and ducks you want. And all we do is walk in the back of my street there, right there. I loved it. I stay in the swamp. That's what this part of my life. I love that. That was my playground. If you wanted to come find me, get in your P-roll and come back down the swamp. That's where I'm going to be at.
So, of course, Dwight has a very strong accent. So I'm going to do my best in parts to make sure we're keeping up. So he's obviously talking about hunting muskrat, raccoons, ducks, and things in the area known as nutria. Nutria are large invasive rodents that live in the Louisiana bayous and wetlands. They look a bit like oversized muskrats or small beavers with orange teeth. They were introduced to Louisiana in the 1930s for the fur trade, but when fur prices collapsed, the population exploded. So after checking his traps, it was straight to the school bus.
They had put me in the special ed classes, and I was coming along. I was making grades. I was doing what I could do. When I got to 6th grade, though, they called my godmother, my nanny, and told us, "Look, we see he's got some difficulties, so we're asking you to allow him to go to a VOTEC that's for people with disabilities and these people with handicap defects and stuff. they can help him, and we want that we can get some VOTEC training because he's not going to be one of these college professors. He's going to need somebody. He's going to be, hands-on training, on jobs. So my nanny said, yeah. So I skipped the 6th grade. I went straight to the 7th grade. Went to junior high, and that's when they put me in plumbing. Now I like it because they work with you. It's people with disabilities. So I took a few years of plumbing there, and then from there they experiment. They say, look, we want to know if you would be able to go to the regular VOTEC and we get somebody to help you. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. So they let me go to. I told them I wanted to get in navigation. I want to learn how to drive super tankers. That was my goal. But then I got interested in the Army. I was going to join the Army. And I was in 11th grade. Now, that was my thing. I wanted to be a helicopter repairman then. And next thing you know, my recruiting officer tells me, he said, Mr. Bergeron, I'm sorry. He said, your piece of paper that you got, and then what the paper's written on. That's what you mean. He said, that certificate for completing 12 years of school, he said, it ain't going to work. We can't accept that. It's not a high school diploma. I said, but I'm finishing high school? He said, can't accept it. You got to score a double high score on the test. I said, there's no way I could do that.
So after being sent to a vocational technical school, Dwight wanted to join the Army, as he mentions. However, the issue he faced was with his VOTEC certificate. The Army didn't see that certificate as the same as a high school diploma. And if Dwight wanted in, he'd have to ace the military's entrance exam with almost double the score. For a kid who never finished school, that dream ended right there, in the recruiter's office. He would go back to his school, but there was essentially very little they could do for him. And that was that. But ironically, when he ended up incarcerated, he would find more help in there than he did in the free world. And he would get that high school diploma as a convicted felon.
I graduated. Well, I didn't graduate. I left there with a 3rd grade education, 6th grade reading, stuff like that. 3rd grade average math and stuff like that. But then I got here and went to night school and got all that picked up and had somebody with, because they had me in college over here, and I was like, I can't handle it. It's too much for me. I couldn't do it. Just go ahead and lock me up in the cell. I can't do this, man. I can't. He said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put one of these guys with you that's going to help you. And this guy had patience, and I appreciate that. And he worked with me. And next thing you know, I'm up there getting my college degree. Like I told him, I said, man, I just need somebody to help me. Just give me patience, that can help me. I ain't fast, but if you just show me, I'm pitchers. You show me pitches, I got you.
Although as a kid, Dwight seemingly didn't have many opportunities in life, he did love sport. Unfortunately, something else that was out of his control would put a stop to any dreams of a professional career.
I love football, but I realized coming up that at the age of 13, I stopped growing. I'm only 5'3". So I realized that I wasn't going to be big enough to go into the NFL. So I just played what I could, But I was also in bodybuilding. I said, well, I'd like to be a professional bodybuilder, but I also seen that was affecting again because of my height. But I was also went to bodybuilding when I was a teenager, so I love that too. But my thing was, I like to drive super tankers, and that was one of my main things. I like to drive. So they let me into that school, and then, it was a 2-year course, nautical science it's called, and navigation. That was my thing. The better drive super tankers, and then my last year, I was like, I can go in the Army. I like to be in the Army. I love, shit, if I don't drive super tankers, I can work on helicopters. So that's what my thing was, to be able to go to school in the Army and work on helicopters. And that's when I went ahead and went to the recruiting office, and I went to join the Army and kind of find out, because of my disability, that Mr. Bergeron, we can't use you. Yeah. I'm like, wow.
It was not long after his rejection from the Army at 16 that he finds out his girlfriend is pregnant with their first child. So how did the two of you meet?
I was working at Burger King. That was my first job. And she walked through the door to put an application in. And I'm like, holy mackerel. I was like, oh, man. And I told her, she said she'd like an application. I said, well, ma'am, they ain't taking them. I said, well, she says, but hold on. So I went back there and talked to my boss. I said, man, look. I said, you can give us some of my hours, man. I said, but you got to see this girl here. And so he's like, all right, Bergeron, all right, because I worked anytime he wanted me to. He went back there and he interviewed her, and he come back. He said, I hired her, Bergeron. I said, all right. And it was on. We were young, and we just started learning about, life and birds of the bee. I was 16, But they would mark me, back then, you can drink liquor at 18. So they always, by me being short and stocky and built like I was, they would always mark me 18. So we'd go in, I get the liquor. And that's how my daughter came about. And from there, we just stayed together ever since, for several years.
Now at just 16 years of age, his responsibilities are about to get a lot more serious. He has to provide, not just for himself, but his partner and a new baby. So he sets about trying to find himself some work.
So we were 16. I was like, you know what, I can go in there. And I did. I lied about my age. Back then, all you had to have was any kind of paperwork that's going there, and you can get a Social Security card. So that's what I did. So I was able to lie about my age at 16, tell them I was 18 on that Social Security number, and I was able to go offshore.
The offshore rigs of the Gulf of Mexico were no place for boys. The floating cities of steel and machinery, 20, 30, sometimes 50 miles from shore. Men worked 12-hour shifts 7 days a week for weeks at a time, with nothing but ocean on all sides. The work is dangerous. Heavy pipes swing overhead, drills pounding through rock, decks slick with oil and seawater. Accidents are common, and if something went wrong, the nearest hospital is a helicopter ride away. For men from Louisiana's Bayou country, though, offshore work was the ticket out of poverty. It paid better than anything else around. Better than farming, better than trapping, better than local shift work. That's why Dwight, still just 16 and with a baby on the way, was desperate to get out there. The fact that he lied about his age just to try to make it onto a rig says everything about his life at the time. While most kids his age are still in school, out riding their bikes and getting up to mischief, Dwight was already trying to shoulder the weight of a man's responsibilities, risking his body and his future in some of the toughest, most dangerous work the Gulf had to offer. However, before he could even get out there, he hits a snag.
So here I go. This company called me up to go offshore, and I was like, okay, time to provide for my family. I want to take a back physical. He said, Mr. Bergeron, he said, got some bad news. I said, what you mean? He said, you'll never pass a physical in the oil field. I said, what you mean? He said, you got a class 5, sir. He said, that's the worst you can have. I said, what you mean? Well, ain't nothing wrong with my back. I said, man, I power lift 325 pounds, man. I bench press this. I said, I was squatting. I've been on the powerlifting team. What you mean, nothing wrong with my back? He said, Mr. Bergeron, look at that. He showed that x-ray. He said, you see that, your lower back? It's a perfect effect. He said, you'll never pass a back physical in all your field. Oh, my God. I'm like, this dude just hit me with a ton of bricks.
When Dwight sat in that doctor's office staring at the glowing x-ray, he was being handed a label that would follow him for the rest of his life. The doctor told him he had a class 5. In plain English, that meant he wasn't fit for the kind of hard physical labor the oil fields demanded. A class 5 wasn't a broken bone that would heal. He had a birth defect in his spine. Something permanent, something that meant companies wouldn't take the risk of hiring him. Offshore work required men who could haul pipe, climb steel ladders, and endure 12-hour shifts on their feet. Dwight may have felt like he could do the work, but if the doctor said your back couldn't handle it, that was the end of the conversation. For Dwight, who was just 16 and desperate to provide for his new family, being stamped with a class 5 wasn't just a medical classification, it was another closed door. Another chance at a better life slipping through his hands. He would fail 4 more back tests. So with the oil fields out of reach, Dwight turns to whatever work he could find. Contractors, day labor, small jobs that didn't demand a medical exam. If a company didn't require a back physical, he'd take it. And that meant learning lots and lots of different jobs, and quickly.
They actually were sending people overseas. So I was looking at this, that's how I can make some good money. I could stay go for 6 months at a time. That's what I was looking forward to. I could better be, a nice house, a nice car, nice things I want for my wife and my first daughter, and then kind of find out I can't do shit. So from there, I I had to work for what's called contractors. Go offshore and work shipyards anywhere they didn't have a back physical. I failed 4 of them. That's why I pretty much know a lot, because I had to watch. I'll be on the job watching somebody. Hey, man, what is your job? What you doing? I'm a rigger. You're a rigger. What all you do? I just got to watch you. And then I'll come back in. I'll go to another company. I'll apply for a rigger. I'll be in the shipyard and watching people doing crane signals. I learn my crane signals. Hey, man, what is your job? What do you do? I'm a sandblaster and painter. I put on a helmet. I watch them. I come back in. I go to another company. I say, hey, I know how to sandblast and paint. And that's how I just got to watch them. And when I watch them, I come back in. I apply and I get that job. I just got to watch you. If I watch you, then I got you. I'm going to do that job. So that's how I was able to learn. And that's how I was able to do all the jobs I could do.
So were you mainly working around sort of shipyards and places like that?
Yeah, contractors.
Yeah.
Shipyards and oil field.
Dwight and his girlfriend get married at 17 and eventually would become parents to 3 more children. Rebecca was their eldest. Then was the boys, Chris and Shane. And finally, baby Jacob. Dwight's now in his early 20s, and he and his wife have been separated for close to a year, which he said he was devastated about and was doing all he could to get his family back together. However, work in the oil fields was sporadic and not as easy to come by as it once had been. So he himself struggled to find not only work, but also a place to stay. Wanting to ensure his kids kept a roof over their own heads, 3 of his children are sent to live with his family, his 3 boys, in fact, while his daughter, Rebecca, is living with his former partner's grandmother.
My kids were with my family and doing the best we could at the time. And then my daughter went to her grandma's, and my boys and all that was with my family. And one day her mama called me up, and she called me up, and they called me to the house. So I get over there, and I'm like, what's up, Ma? I called her Mama because she had the same name, my mom. And I said, what's up, Ma? She said, Dwight. Her and her ex are sitting right there at the table, and they're running down to me and said, Dwight, you're going to report to the child welfare officer services, and you're going to lose your kids. I'm like, why? What's wrong? She said, you got to scat it out. And I'm like, what's wrong with, they got a roof over their head. My family's helping me and stuff like that. So what's the deal, She said, well, the state going to take them away, Dwight, and you're never going to see your kids again. My stupid ass, I'm young, I don't know better. So I don't want that to happen. And she said, well, we got these people that's friends of her, which is Angela's mama, is her mama, which would be my wife's grandmother. She has some friends that say they'll help you and take the boys in until you can get, settle and get you a woman that can help you with the kids. I said, okay. So if I don't lose, if they stay, well, yeah, okay, then if that's what I got to do. So
these people that were going to help you out, they were friends with your former partner's grandmother.
Correct.
Okay, and had you ever met these people? Did you know much about them? Anything about them at all?
No, I met them when they came down to get the boys, and that was it.
But you never heard from Child Services, so no one from Child Services had ever contacted you. All you heard about Child Services was through your partner's mother, who said that they're going to take them away from
Correct.
you.
Yep.
And how old are you at the time when this is happening?
Oh, God. About 23, 24, 23, something like that.
Okay.
23.
It's about 23, 24. So all you know is you've got a call one day saying, we need to talk to you. You've turned up, and all of a sudden they're saying to you, look, Child Services are going to take the boys away because you've got the kids separated and spread out all over the place, and Child Services are going to take them away. But hey, we've got a couple here that are quite happy to look after the boys until you can get yourself sorted.
Exactly.
Which obviously at the time when you're 23, you're not thinking this through. But to me, hearing this straight away, I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make sense because they're still going to be separated. Everyone's still separated. They're just going to be separated with a different couple now.
Right.
So eventually, obviously, because you don't want the kids to be taken away, you agree and say, sure, these people can look after the children until I can get myself sorted.
Correct.
And then, so when they come to pick up the boys, that's when you meet them for the first time.
Correct.
And what was that meeting like?
Honestly, I just wanted to get it over with and get away. Hardest thing I could have ever done. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It's little rascals with my life. So, I didn't want to stay around long. I didn't want to talk long. Do what you got to do and let me go. Cause I just can't handle what I'm doing right now. I'm seeing my boys all laughing and, hey, daddy, this, and hey, daddy, this and that. And then I see them go take them in the room so we can leave. That's it.
Let the bellows blow. Let the fire grow.
As the boys drove off that day with their new foster family, little did Dwight say he knew at the time, but his life was set to change forever when, less than a month later, he says the boy's new family wanted to keep his kids. And if he didn't agree to it, well, they'd make sure he didn't get them back.
They told me they want adoption. I said, I'm not giving my kids up for adoption. They said, if you don't give them up and sign that paperwork for the adoption, they're going to say that you sexually abused them kids and they're going to put you away, Dwight.
Next time on 1 Minute Remaining.
The bellows blow. Swing the heavy sledge. Temper me with pain. Forge me in your holy flames.
1 Minute Remaining is a Mashed Pumpkin production, created, hosted and produced by Jack Lawrence. With thanks to special guest producer, Alyssa Cook. Audio and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans of Earsay.